Hello, my name is Radagast, at your service. So, true mission of peace, thoughts and comments, as I guess it's now official that Ron Van Dyke released a video with our team, the ambassadors team. Although even we say the ambassadors team, we pulled around him. He would be kind of the locus point and focus point of energies, but I can certainly speak that at these meetings it's not as if he's some kind of chairman and directing everybody as to what to do. It's a very level playing field, and it's really, he's more of an inspiration than a director. As any good group should be, it's about self-initiative, where a group meets, different objectives are identified for wanting to get accomplished, and then the people who think that they are probably most prepared and skilled to accomplish this are the people who say, "Oh, I have that covered," and it's a beautiful process, and one that I would like to see practice generally, where it is the desire of somebody and their recognized skill level that not only gets the task but wants the task, so that the passion that's required for elite level of work can get done, which is a real big difference than how things get done now, which is cronyism. And cronyism takes place even in families. And families are many ways where you can kind of see your own. My nose is itching. Families where you can kind of see almost like a microcosm of almost a cabal situation, where because you know people and you might have allegiances with them, emotional attachments, that you close a blind eye, you turn a blind eye to people not being competent, but it gets done anyway because, oh, it's my family, oh, it's my friend, oh, it's this, rather than, oh, well, they're the best qualified. The fact that I happen to know them is not a conflict of interest, it's actually a benefit because I know how deeply qualified they are. So, but that's just a little side comment there. But true mission of peace is how we get where we're going, because you really can't get a lot done without peace. Now, peace is we have a lot of words that we use that are really little more than memes. Enlightenment. One of my favorite memes that has almost no relevance to reality is awake and aware. Awake and aware, or the awake and aware crowd, the awake and aware community, is largely people who they're aware that their governments are not what they appear to be, that the news is propaganda. They're aware of that, but greater awareness, like almost how one contributes to upholding the Cabal, the beast, 666, call it what you will. Our own complicity is mentioned time and time again, and as often as it is mentioned, it is just as often denied. And that support, that support is in so many ways. It's really, so much of it is unconscious. I was trying to point out something in a thread of mine, and it had to do with when the Omnibus bill, which was the last budget bill that the United States passed, there was a stipulation where funding for the Department of Homeland Security ended on the 27th of February. That was it. It was a little tiny piece I think I picked up somewhere on Rents. Story closed. Then yesterday I found a link to, I think it might have been on Press TV, but it was something about John Boehner, who is the Speaker of the House, happens to be a Republican in the fake system that the United States has. And he was basically, there was they were speaking about how there's only 10 days, this was yesterday, now there's 9 days left, before Department of Homeland Security is unfunded unless they refund it. Now, I think this is a political dance. I think that if the Department of Homeland Security was going to get funds, it would have been in the Omnibus bill. In other words, the budget bill that was last passed. The fact that they didn't get funded in a bill like that, I mean, the Department of Homeland Security is the umbrella for all the security agencies. So not funding it, I don't think, was an oversight. And I think right now this is some political theater where it's being brought up, and again, this is how the news plays things. I mean, if you read the New York Times, you'll hear all the nonsense, and then somewhere on page 23 or 96 in the lower left-hand corner, you might see something, oh, they retract something, or they say something important. But it's reported, but it's not focused. And people, a newspaper like the New York Times, the sheer volume of it makes people almost need to read only the big headline stories and leave the other stuff alone, or else they would never have time for life. And so when I published the link to it, somebody thought that I was depending on Republicans for truth, rather than the fact that I only have seen 2 mentions of it. I mean, I scour the internet sites that I can look for news without throwing up, and so those are the only 2 places I saw it. Right after the Omnibus bill was passed, and when there was a little mention by Boehner yesterday. And I think this is huge news. I mean, in 9 days, the Department of Homeland Security, unless refunded, is gone. And that is a huge part of the cabal. So this is, I mean, I call this the changing world that we're seeing as we move towards true peace. And this is not to be I think this is big. If they don't get refunded, a huge part of the problem that started with 2001 and that crime, you choose your own criminals, but it was a crime, a huge crime, a crime against humanity. And so the Department of Homeland Security popped up then. All other security agencies, CIA, NSA, are supposedly under that umbrella. And all the fusion centers, that's all Department of Homeland Security. So by defunding Department of Homeland Security, not only do we get rid of this bureaucracy that was started by Chertoff. And Chertoff is known, he's a dual citizen of another country. And so when people belong to 2 countries, you have to wonder which country is really their main country. And some people say, well, it depends on the country. Their purposes are aligned. Oh, really? We have 2 political parties in our country whose purposes are not aligned. So I think when you start bringing in second countries and say, oh, we're aligned, that is an impossibility. So Department of Homeland Security going away. This is part changing world. Another story that came out last week was Langley, that's the headquarters of the CIA, was on lockdown, and they actually showed a picture of police tape and things like that. And why exactly this is happening hasn't been mentioned, but again, these are the Department of Homeland Security and the CIA are probably one of the biggest cabal fronts, largely because the CIA was started by during the paperclip program when the Nazis came over. So in many ways, the CIA has a real Nazi agenda, and so seeing the Nazis go away would be nice too. So something is going on there. That's why Langley was shut down. Then you have what's going on in Ukraine. An interesting thing was I recently was I read an article, financial article, I think it was on zerohedge.com, a good place to get both political news that you can kind of follow through finances, because when you know finances rule the world, if you know how to track the financial news from a perspective of what's happening with shadow government, you can really get a very clear picture. And so what we hear of is from the IMF. Now, the United States has I think since 2010 had the IMF has requested it to adjust its position, because the United States, let's say it's part of 5 members. Of course, it's bigger than that. And so you would think with 5 members, the voting rights would be 20%, 20%, 20%, you know, 5 times. But instead, it's more like the United States has 49% voting rights to whoever the remainder is. And especially with the founding of the BRICS nations and how much they represent as far as trade and you know, money goes, that the equation was imbalanced. And this gave the U.S. veto rights far and beyond its participation as far as numbers of people. And so there was an article about it, and the most interesting thing it was the first time I ever saw it, where they were talking, I think it was about the funding in the Ukraine, how much money they were getting. I think that was around a 17.5 or 17.3 IMF loan. But what was interesting, it was the first time I ever saw the amount of the money put in SDR, which is the IMF basket of currencies term for special drawing rights. And special drawing, and so what was interesting was they showed what the IMF loan was in SDRs, and then they broke it down into USD, US dollars, and they broke it down into I don't know if it was the euro or the pound, one or the other. But in each case, you could see that both the dollar and the euro had less value than the SDR unit. As a matter of fact, when I looked, this was a few days, 2 or 3 days ago, when I looked at, so if you, the SDR kind of sets itself as 1, all right? You know, 1 out of, you know, or else 100 if you want to see it that way, is like $1 is 100 cents. So if SDR is 1, the United States dollar was 0.74 and some more fractions up, but basically, let's say 0.75. So it was like 3/4 of a dollar. So if you have, this quarter equals 75 cents against an SDR dollar. Not that there is a dollar, again, a special drawing rights 1, and then the United States dollar was 74, and the euro was maybe, you know, in the 80s or something, and the pound a little higher. So this was the first time I read a lot of financial news. It was the first time I ever saw SDR. And if you know how things work, this is the preparation. Start looking for the term SDR. In the past, whenever you saw things, you know, put down, you'd usually see dollars and then maybe euros or dollars a pound. Usually dollars and euros. This is the first time for SDR, dollars and euros. This is new language being introduced. Because probably around May, because don't forget, May 2nd is May Day, and part of the Cabal and other people, including people who follow astrological and other energetic, magical type traditions. I mean, there's 4 holidays. You have the 2 solstices, you have the 2 equinoxes, and then you have the interim days like Halloween, May Day, or Beltane. Halloween, May Day, but then you have Lammas, that's August 2nd. And I'm missing the, I know the 4th one. It'll probably come to me while I talk. But anyway, there's 4 of them, and the other 4 are between or 6 weeks. Is that 6 weeks? Yeah, out of 3 months, what you do is you have the interim. So it's kind of like, you know, there's a solstice and a tick, and an equinox and a tick, and then a tick and a solstice and a tick, and that's how it works. So May 2nd is the next tick. Actually, the next tick is the vernal equinox in March. But then the next tick is May 2nd. So it looks like by May 2nd, we're probably going to see the IMF readjusting things, where the United States is no longer has its huge veto and say. They had a chance. They've been putting it off in the IMF. They said, you know what? We're going to vote without you. And wherever we vote you is where you're going to be, and there's nothing you can do about it. How's that? It's like Billy Jack in his movie. He says, I'm going to kick you up right over here in the head, and there's nothing you can do about it. So the United States is about to get kicked in the head, and it deserves it. So that's huge. Special drawing rights, and it looks like, if the special drawing rights were to start today, of course, $1 is still $1 in America, but its buying power from the special drawing rights or the basket of currencies, as of a couple of days ago, would be 74 cents. So then those in the United States, even though they still had the same dollars, their buying power would reduce by almost 1/4. I spoke to somebody and asked them, and his opinion was more like 10%. Once again, you'll still have that. It's not necessarily that if you look in your bank account that if you had $10,000 that suddenly you'll have 9,000 or 7,500, although that could happen too. But in another way, it might be where it's there, but it doesn't buy what it used to, because the world is shifting, and it's shifting away from parasitical energy like the Western Cabal, of which the United States and England are the main partners, and then they have their other partner parked over there in the Levant. But that's another story, and it's an emotional story for a lot of people, so we'll leave it alone. Yemen. Almost every Western embassy in Yemen has been closed. It started in the United States, and then, you know, the various, you know, Germany, France, other ones closed their embassies. The interesting thing, so that means the CIA, here they come again, the Nazis, have basically been thrown out of Yemen. The interesting thing is, although Yemen had the embassies closed and they got rid of the CIA, they're tolerating the United States military. And I think that that's a clear sign that, and we're going to see, I think we're going to start seeing clearer signs that the Pentagon is in fact, as a five-sided figure, going to be aligned with 555. And that's one of the reasons why I think they were tolerated in Yemen and there's no attacks there, although I certainly hope they do something about the drone strikes. But if the drone strikes were being driven by the CIA and just carried out by the army, we might see a decrease in those strikes as well. So that's Yemen and what that sounds. And then, of course, the PLO opened up an embassy in Europe last week. So this is, I mean, the world is changing rapidly. Then you have Hezbollah. Hezbollah is now in the Syrian Golan Heights, and not just in, because Syria allowed them to come on board. And basically, it looks like the plan is for them, Hezbollah and the Syrian army, to drive Al Qaeda, ISIS, or whoever, Al Nusra, any of the rebels, into at least the Israeli Golan, where they can then kind of call bullshit on ISIS, Al Qaeda, and Israel, because if they manage to drive Al Qaeda onto Israeli territory and Al Qaeda doesn't attack Israel, well, then Al Qaeda is shown to be full of shit. And if Israel doesn't attack Al Qaeda on its territory, then Israel is proven to be full of shit. So it's, you know, it's useful, because a big part of the truth and a big part of peace is pulling up the rug and for people to see what's nonsense. So the whole ISIS Muslim thing, and that, you know, that they represent the Islamic world when they're going into Israeli hospitals, that's all, and Turkish hospitals as well. I mean, basically, you know, those who are closest to Israel will be taken care of by the Israelis. Those closest to Turkey will be taken care of by the Turks. But in each case, we see that there's a lot of support for terrorism from people who were not supposed to be supporting it. So that's the changing world. That's the kind of the changing world thing. This mission of true peace. So back to true peace. True peace has to start with the individual, and part of that peace is to make peace with yourself, make peace with your friends, make peace with your family, but most importantly, you have to make peace with yourself. A lot of people, as this world is shifting, a lot of people are becoming less and less certain. And one of the problems is when you realize that your government is little more than organized crime, you are confronted with an existential problem. First of all, you either do something or you don't do something. And then even if you move to do something, do you have the peace and the frame of mind that allows you to envision what comes next? I think one of the things that stops a lot of people from dismantling what they might know is a rotten system is because they haven't sat down long enough and discussed with people as to what comes next. Now that's a big order. Let's take the family unit again. To me, which could be a unit of great strength, unfortunately, most family units are where the dysfunction starts. And so when you realize that a family with a few members often has trouble charting its own progress, where the parents might be split on what is best, and then the kids have their own input that could be even another path, and the compromises and dysfunction and really usually lack of the goal doesn't get happen. The compromises happen and everybody gets a little piece of something, and a lot of times it's a little piece of crap instead of the real thing. I can't reiterate enough or say enough that compromise is not a good thing. Renegotiating so that both sides get what they need is not compromise. It's revisiting what you think you need and then renegotiating, as opposed to and if you do give up something, it's because you realize that it was something you actually didn't need. It's not crucial. It was actually an emotional attachment that you had for something that you inserted, and once you drop your emotional attachment, the need for something to happen disappears with that emotional need for it to happen. And then we start getting practical and focusing on what really needs to happen instead of what we want to happen. Needs first, wants can come later. But when it comes to needs, compromising, true needs cannot be compromised. I mean, you don't want to compromise the amount of oxygen in your air because you need it. You don't want to compromise your food, although most people do. If you're not buying organic, you're eating compromised food. And so the peace will come from within. And then from within, you need to find peace within your family. And then you need to find peace within your community, because it's really only at the community level that true social change can be found. Because families are just are a smaller unit of self in many ways. They're much more nepotistic and crony-like than a community normally would be. With a community, you have more disimpassioned observers. More wisdom can prevail. Rarely does wisdom prevail in family settings unless you happen to have one wise person and other people who are willing to listen to wise counsel. Otherwise, you have the normal dysfunctional shit show that passes for a family. Not that there aren't really great families. There are great. Of course, we know there's great families. The fact is that the average family is much like our political system, a clown show. So maybe that's enough on Mission True Peace. This is about preparation, and I know when people say, "Oh, the big announcement." Well, the big announcement is that there's a team that is coordinated with the ambassador to get things done. And as the ambassador said, always in his various talks that various people hosted, this is not. You don't talk about what you're going to do. You talk that there's something happening, and then when things are going to happen, as they're happening, they get talked about. Even with releasing this true mission of peace, there was a build-up, and that I felt bad because there was, oh, here comes something good, and then the hold-up on it almost made it seem like it was something quote-unquote really good. And the reason I say quote-unquote really good with some reservation is because for most people, what they want to hear is, oh, here comes the money. Or, oh, we're sending troops to dismantle your government, or something like that. And of course, we all know something like that would not go over very well. I've mentioned in the past, if somebody were to arrest Dick Cheney, you'd have a portion of the country out with their guns to protect Dick Cheney, a war criminal. And I just wrote a few things down. There is no dark side to eliminate. It is about managing it. There is nothing in the darkness we do not give form to. We either allow it or not, consent or no. Understand the dance with the external destructive forces. And part of as Ron has been saying, and he's been presenting it in a really warm and wise fashion, Ron Van Dyke that is, about once you recognize how these forces play, you realize how important it is for you to have the awareness so that you can play. Right now, see, the Cabal, let's call it that way, the Cabal plays like a team. They're on the same team. They may disagree, but they agree, because if they don't agree, they won't get anything done. And then, of course, they, pass on to us, oh, because we have democracy, we're free. And then everybody, then it becomes a free-for-all. Everybody wants to have their opinion heard. Everybody wants, then if their opinion is, sometimes people bring up opinions that are really quite sloppy, not well thought out, and emotionally based. And then if you show them what's the fault in where they're coming from, very often they actually withdraw, because they have to go have a tantrum and cry or do something like that. And this is why the few can rule the many, is because the many are too busy disagreeing with each other about what the problem is, how to deal with the problem. How many, I'm quite sure in America there are a lot of people millions of people identify as Democrats and Republicans, or Tea Party, or Libertarian, and all this stuff. So you have all these people who they believe in a political system because they belong to a party, and meanwhile a political system is like having a family with 4 different opinions about how to get something done. And as I've said before, in a hive, you don't see bees going, oh no, we're going to do this. There's no need for discussion, because what needs to be done is obvious. And that's part of us becoming our own elite, where we know what we're capable of. We're looking to put those capabilities into motion, and we're looking for people who are aligned with our purpose, or who even say something, we go, oh, that sounds like a possibility for myself and my skills, which I have raised by myself and my own will to an elite level, where my performance is as a level where things can get done. So I think that'll wrap it up for today. Especially, this was supposed to be a short talk, and it's almost 30 minutes. I said talk twice, because first it came out like a bronze person, then it came out like a person who knows how to sound words. So that'll close this one. Who knows? I might do another video. Things have been very busy with the mission for true peace, and just generally managing, keeping rested, and staying clear of the things. So I love you all. Please know that. And before all else, I see the God within you.